as Russian attacks in eastern Ukraine intensify. President Zelensky says diplomacy is the only way the war on his country will end.
And the Daily Star on Sunday reports that Ukrainian forces found an attack dog which had been abandoned by Russian forces and have now retrained the animal to work for them. The headline is Special Furces.
Venezuela is suffering a shortage in the supply of fertilizer due to the Russian invasion in Ukraine. Well, now is the season to plant corn, a staple in the country, but agricultural producers are faced with the challenge of finding enough fertilizer for their crops. Emily Brown reports.
As the rain pours in Venezuela, this is the season to plant corn, a staple here. But just like much of Latin America, the race is on to find fertilizer, vital for crops. It's another country feeling the impact of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, which has limited the supply of the key agricultural supplement. 80% of fertilizers used every year in Venezuela are imported from Russia, Ukraine and Belarus. Sanctions against Russia and limits on Ukraine's exports mean shipping has been disrupted and the whole of Latin America is struggling to find replacements.
Here in Venezuela, as agriculture is now, we need 150 to 180,000 tonnes of fertilizer. The inventories show that what has arrived is around 100,000 tonnes.
It's another challenge to a country already dealing with fuel shortages.
We're going to work with the fertilizer we have, but we know that's not enough. In some parts we're going to use underdoses, which is serious because it affects not only the yield but also the profitability of the farmers.
The country is exploring other options to source fertilizer, but with 250,000 hectares of corn expected to be sown by the farming sector, time is running out. Emily Brown, BBC News.
Now, the Ukrainian government says it won't agree to a ceasefire with Russia that involves giving up territory.
Yes, a presidential advisor said making concessions would backfire on Kyiv because Moscow would immediately escalate the war after any break in fighting. Russian forces are advancing still in the east of the country.
We're joined now by Joe Inwood, our correspondent in Kyiv. Joe, thank you so much for getting up and joining us this morning. Now, the Russians are no longer in Mariupol. Is that, in your view, allowing forces to concentrate their attacks in other parts of the country?
Yes, essentially. So the forces that were having to maintain the siege around the Azovstal steelworks, that was at one point up to 22 battalion tactical groups. Now they're being freed up. And what we're seeing, and we don't know if it's the same troops, we should say, but what we're seeing is a renewed offensive through a town called Popasna. Over the last few days, we've heard reports of incredibly intense artillery bombardment, and the Russians have started to make advances. What we're seeing, therefore, is they come through this town, Popasna, and they're trying to circle up to the north to encircle a city or town called Severodonetsk. This is the last kind of holdout that the Ukrainians have on the eastern bank of a crucial river. So if they can come around there, cut them off, then they can create another siege. So what we're seeing, I mean, the comments you referenced there by Mikhail Podolak were quite strong. He's saying that they're not going to concede any ground. But it seems increasingly that strong rhetoric is at odds with the reality that we see on the ground.